When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Sing it with me now. When I breathe in, oh, I breathe in peace. Oh, my. When I breathe out, yeah, I breathe out. When I breathe in, oh, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Yes, indeed. We are doing this, even though it's online, even though we've been doing it for almost 7 months. We are doing this, and we are together. I wanted to share a story. I do a reading every morning when I wake up. Before I grab, it's such a temptation to grab my phone and get right onto Facebook or check my email or something. And I've disciplined myself to do some kind of spiritual reading first, to nourish my spirit before I just get sucked into the vortex of social media and all the things that come online. And so I have this book called The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo. It's a great book, daily readings. And I read one this week where he talks about a woman named Miriam Elks. Miriam Elks was in the Jewish ghetto in Lithuania, one of the terrible, it's called the Kovno Ghetto, and it was during World War II. And she went from the depravity of the ghetto to the horrors of one of the concentration camps. I believe she was in Dachau. She survived, one of the folks who did survive. And after the war, she told her son that there were two objects that kept her alive, that really sustained her through the ghetto, and I believe through the camp as well. And one of them was a piece of bread. Now, I don't know if you brought bread. I was trying to encourage people to take a piece of bread so you could take it out, put your hands on it. I could see, I'm looking down to see if anyone on the Zoom has a piece of bread, just to touch that and to feel that bread. She said that she carried a piece of bread with her always, in case someone needed it more than she did. Now, Viktor Frankel, who also survived the concentration camp in World War II, said that everything can be taken from a person except for the final freedom, our freedom to choose our own attitude, no matter what circumstances we find ourselves in, no matter how we're being treated. And he specifically talked about people like Miriam who gave away bread. I mean, here they were in the concentration camp. Everybody was hungry and malnourished, deprived, and yet there were some people that said, I will not be defined by the Nazis. I will not be defined by these awful circumstances. I will not turn against my brother and sister, but I am a person who gives, and I'm a person who cares, and I'm going to do that even if it's the last thing I have a chance to do, because that's who I am. And she continued to affirm her own dignity by giving away a piece of bread every day. If somebody else needed it more than she did, Lord knows she needed food as much as everybody else. Now, David Brooks, the New York Times columnist, did some research and wrote an article about this a few months back when he was looking at how he wanted to look back at the 1918 pandemic to figure out how did people, what do we learn from that? What kind of culture-changing things came out of that? What kind of writing and literature and creativity? So he went back to look, and he had a hard time finding much. And he really wondered why that was. He had to work really hard to find things where people were writing about that experience and what they'd been through. And what he learned from that was that most Americans were not very proud of how they showed up. In fact, most Americans, he said, were pretty embarrassed about how they turned on their neighbors and they hoarded resources and the way in which they acted in the face of all the fear of the pandemic. And it was scary. And the folks realized what Brooks realized was that when we're under intense circumstances and stress, it sometimes brings out the worst in us. It certainly brings out different parts of our personality. This week I saw a drawing from the artist Adam Ellis. And in his drawing, it was sort of a 4-part cartoon, if you will. And I'm going to show you the picture here on the screen. The first one shows him holding a ball of just regular anxiety, the anxiety that we all have, the regular anxiety, getting through life. We all have a little bit, we're worried about this or that or whatever's going on in our lives. So there's that ball of just regular anxiety that we can all hold. We can handle one ball. But then in the next panel, you see he gets handed COVID anxiety too. Now he's got his hands full with the regular anxiety of life, and now he got COVID. Am I going to get COVID? What do I got to do? Do I have my mask? Have I washed my hands? Did I just touch my face? Right? All of that. And then in the midst of that, he gets handed election anxiety. Right? That's what we're dealing with now too. Is this one of the most unbelievable, one of the most really terrifying elections in living history, if ever, in America. So we're all sitting here trying to juggle all of this different anxiety. And then in the last and final scene, more gets piled on. The seasonal depression as fall hits and it starts to get darker. And then he's got the ball about being worried about global warming, right? So now he's getting really weighed down. He's got another one about getting ridiculed on social media, right? A lot of us are on social media for the first time doing things. And so there's a lot of learning curve. We're handling all this anxiety, all of this stress. And when we're going through intense times like this, we don't always show up with the best part of ourselves. We need to be kind to ourselves and try to be kind and compassionate to others who we love as well as to strangers, but it's not always easy. I was reminded, thinking about this, of a story back in 1999 before I came here to Tulsa. My wife and I were newly married. We had a little apartment in Somerville, Massachusetts, and in our apartment, we had a little breakfast nook. It was just a small table right by a window, and we would sit there and eat breakfast. One night, we were having dinner. We had the window open, beautiful day, and fall evening, and we were having a nice dinner and talking. And with the window open, we started to hear a plane coming really fast, and it sounded really loud, and it kept coming, and it kept coming closer, and it got so loud, and it was going so fast, and literally, we were convinced it was going to blow through the wall. It was about to run into our apartment. That was the only thing we could imagine. It was coming right to our apartment. I don't think we said anything. We both just picked up and started running away from the wall where we were sitting. And we ran into our bedroom and dove underneath our futon bed, as if that was going to, protect us from a plane crashing through our apartment.
But it's a feeling, yeah.
This was, but this was before September 11, 2001. We didn't, you didn't usually think about planes running into buildings back then, but we were sure, we were frightened. We kicked off, the fight or flight part of our brain, right? And so. Now, the way my wife tells this story is a little different than how I just explained it. When she tells it, she says that as we were heading through the doorway into our bedroom, I held her back so that I could get in there before her. Now, of course, I don't like that version of the story at all. I don't think that's what happened, but, she says it did. It does not fit with the heroic sense of myself that I like to think I would have held the door for my wife to get in before me, but that's not how she claims it happened. I was worried about my life more than her own, and the thing is that in those moments, we don't know how we're going to show up when difficult things happen. I mean, people who are first responders and things, they rehearse those moments so that when they kick into fight or flight, they act the way they want to. If this were to happen again, I like to think now, having rehearsed that once and having been teased by my wife now for 21 years, that I will, if she ever lets me live it down, I'll be ready to stand aside and let my wife walk through that door and dive under the bed before I get there. Now, just to finish the story for you, what happened was, there was Major League Baseball was having their playoffs. It was the Yankees against the Red Sox, I believe, and so the Air Force did a flyover. And it turned out, it was in the news the next day, that they were actually fined because they flew way too low over the city. Actually, car alarms were going off all over the city. And we weren't the only ones who were afraid, and it was incredibly loud. We survived, so I have to live down that story for the rest of my life. But my point is this, that when this kind of thing happens, when we find ourselves in a tragedy, a trauma, a crisis, those kinds of things, how do we show up? And we'll be thinking about that for the rest of our lives. And we'll be reminded of that for the rest of our lives, about how we showed up. So this message today is about how do we maintain our dignity and our personhood in the midst of struggle. One of the things that Miriam Elks did, I told you 2 objects. So maybe you brought a comb or a brush. She had it was a broken comb. And she carried that and a piece of bread. Those were the 2 objects that she carried with her. And every chance she got, morning or night, she would comb her hair. She would comb her hair to affirm her personhood. And what is it that we have to give to others in the midst of this? And how are you affirming your personhood, your beauty, your love, your greatness, your wholeness, that you're okay, that you're important, that you matter, all of those things? And one of the things I do want to say is that when this is all over, this COVID-19, whatever that means, is all over, I will be proud of how this church has shown up. How we have shown up we've been collecting money for food. We've been feeding hundreds of people throughout this, those who have the least in our community, for 7 months now. You've been giving money through our collection plate, and we've been distributing it with the help of other churches and other community organizations. We've been showing up on the streets and at City Hall for Black lives during this time in our history. Our congregation showed up to bring a meal to the police officer's family. You remember when we had 2 police officers who were shot? One was killed, and one was in the intensive care unit for a long time. And our community showed up. Our church showed up to bring a meal for 40-some members of the police force and family. That was a Muslim family. It was a Muslim officer. And so our church said, hey, we want to make sure that they have what they need. They're all holding vigil, hoping he would survive, and he did, and he's back in Tulsa today after some rehab. But we showed up in that way too. And I feel good about that because our work for Black lives and our work for police reform is not anti-police in any way, shape, or form. We appreciate the police. We love the police. We also appreciate justice, and we appreciate human rights, and we want to make sure that happens. So, here we are, doing that kind of thing, and showing up for those who are getting COVID in our community. We've had a baby with COVID. We've had folks who've had loved ones die of COVID, and we've been showing up as a church. This church has really made a difference. And I want to give a big shout out to our community resource bank, our partners in education, our action team, our care teams who've been just doing incredible things, our street medics. We had a team of nurses, doctors, and other caregivers who became street medics to help make sure that the people who are going out on the streets in these protests have what they need to stay safe and stay healthy. Amazing people. I also want to give a shout out to the AllSouls staff who've just been incredible during this time, just showing up, figuring things out, working from home, doing whatever needs to be done, changing jobs, juggling opportunities, just doing everything. And I'm just so proud of how folks have shown up. It's beautiful. And I think of it, I look at the geese flying over, this being fall, we're seeing a lot of geese in that arrow. And some people take the front when they can. The geese take the front, and we do that. It's the same thing about being in a community. That's why I'm glad to be in a community going through a time like this, because we're not always able to be in the front to break the wind, but that's what the geese do. The front ones break the wind for a while as long as they can, and then when they get tired, they go to the back, and someone else takes the front, and then they go to the back, and someone else takes the front, and that's what it means to be in a community. There's times when we can't do something because we're sick, or because we're the ones who have the illness, or we're the ones who have a loved one dying. We're the ones grieving or going through a difficult time with our children, or whatever it is. And then there's others in the community who are handling it better, or able to handle it. And so then they take the front, and we do this for each other. I remember I would never have made it through when my daughter died back in 2006. My wife and I was flying in front, the senior minister of the church for over 6 years at that point. But I couldn't fly in front, and then other people came and broke the wind and allowed us to heal and get healthy and then come back up to the front. So that's what we do in community. And if you're doing well, I hope that you'll continue to do what you've been doing and help and support. And if you need support, that you're making sure that you let other people come forward and do what they need to do. So I want you to think about what objects you carry, either physical objects or in your heart. What are those things that remind you of your personhood, and those things that allow you to do for others who might not be doing as well as you're doing? And if you can think of some things, put it in the chat if you're on Facebook Live or if you're on Zoom. Put it in the chat. I want to see them. I want us to share those and inspire one another. One of the ways that you can help in this moment and show up and give of yourself is to support All Souls. We don't talk about it that often. We're always giving away our collection plate, but I've been mentioning lately that the church is struggling financially as we get to the end of 2020. We're getting there. We're making it, but it's a little concerning. So we thank you for folks who've been making some extra donations to All Souls to help us get through. That's what we need. We need you. If you're in a position to be able to fly in the front financially and help break some of the wind because others aren't able to, we just appreciate you giving that little bit extra to keep us going. This church has been through the Depression. This church has been through world wars. We've been through a lot together. And the way we get through is the folks who can help us out a little extra, and we do what we can do. In fact, we're going to be launching today we begin launching our pledge campaign for 2021. This isn't about giving money right now, but it's about making a commitment, writing down so that we know what we can expect in 2021. This is going to be the most unusual year for us to budget for. We've never had a year like this before. The staff want to know whether they have a job. We want to know what programs we're going to be able to do. And the only way we could do that is if you make your pledge. If you're a pledging member, or friends of the church can pledge as well, even if you're not a member. And so here's what's going to happen. Pledge cards are going to be sent by mail to those who've given before in the past. If you're a member or a friend of the church, we're going to send you a personalized pledge card in the mail. But you can also go online to our website and you can fill out a pledge card online. But we just ask you to let us know what you can do for 2021 so we can set a realistic budget going into our 100th year. Sometimes in the 100th year, a centennial, people will give a little extra gift or do something special for an organization. Well, this is our 100th birthday, and if you can do that, please do. It will not go to waste, and it will go to help support our church and make sure that we keep our staff here and we keep our programming going. We really appreciate that. I was meeting with a group of some of our larger donors a couple weeks ago to just talk to them about this and to ask whether they were in a position to do something more. And in my conversation with them, which was, of course, on Zoom because we're not meeting in person, I asked whether they could double the gift that they've been giving to All Souls. These are folks who've been giving very generously for a long time. And sure enough, in the last 2 weeks, some of those pledge cards have started to come back in some of those gifts, and some of those folks have doubled their pledge. It was amazing. But I want to tell you something that was even more moving, not more moving, but equally moving to me, was that one of the people on our tech team who heard me making that pitch, was running the whole thing that we were doing online, went home that night, was so inspired, went home that night, talked to his spouse, and said, "Honey, I know we don't have a lot. I know it's not that big of a pledge, but Marlin's asking folks to double their pledge if they can, and I say we do it. What do you think?" And they thought about it, and they decided to double their pledge. And then they reached out to me and told me that story that I just shared with you. And I was so moved, because I know that they don't have a ton of savings. It's not like they have a lot of money. But I realized that, like Miriam Elks, they were saying to themselves, in the midst of this, how do we want to be defined? We're not going to be defined by anything else than who we are, and we're generous, and we care about this community, and we know this community will hold us if we need it and when we need it. And so they're doing their part. And so as you get your pledge cards, or if you can go online today and let us know, the board's going to be working on a budget. The whole church will get a chance to vote on it in the congregational meeting. But I ask you to do what you can do, to fly in front financially if you can, but whatever you can do your part. It really matters how we show up in these times. This is for us, for most of us, this is our Great Depression. We're living through our world war. Hopefully, this is the one time we have to go through something at this level. And the question is, how are we showing up? And I'm really proud of how this church is showing up, how you're showing up, and how we're all holding each other and keeping it all together. I really just want to say thank you. Thank you. I want to say I love you. I hope that you have your versions of the bread and the comb, some way to affirm your humanity, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what you're going through, no matter what people are saying about you or what you're hearing. These folks who were in the concentration camps, and they said, in the midst of such horror and deprivation and death and crisis, they said, I'm gonna take a little bread, and I'm gonna hold it with me. I'm gonna give it to those who might need it more than I do. And they helped some people to survive, no doubt. And you can help us to survive. I love you and I miss you, and I look forward to reading what objects you carry in your heart or in your pockets to help others and to affirm your beauty and your love. Thank you.
Each other, let us sing out joyfully. May abundance lead to gratitude, then to generosity.